Hello, all my YouTube peeps out there, all my folks in the chat room, all my lurkers, all the folks that'll be viewing this later on Memorex. Glad to have you with me today on the 15th day of September, 2016. Wow, halfway through the month. Boy, oh boy, I'll tell you what, it sure is flying by. Everybody heard my announcement that I made yesterday, because I'm going to be doing a show next Wednesday at 2 o'clock with Barry Littleton. And if you haven't heard of who he is, you can look him up on YouTube, Barry Littleton, Littleton. And he's got a lot of videos out that you can take a look at. And he's been on a lot of other shows too. And he's very well written. He's an alien experiencer. And boy, I'll tell you, he's got information to share. We really had a good time when I had him on the show before. And you can pull that up in the archives and take a look at that too. We didn't even scrape the surface on that show of all the knowledge that he has. So it's going to be fun to have him back on. That's next Wednesday at 2 p.m. We'll have the regular news show here at noon, and then at 2 we'll be back with Barry. So hope everybody can join us and bring your questions to the chat room. Questions during the show. And here in Indiana, it's a pretty day. Sun's shining. It's in the low 70s. A few leaves are twitching on the tree, so there's a little breeze going out there. Hard later this afternoon. I'm hoping that doesn't go on a whole lot longer. While I love summer, I do despise having to deal with that yard. And I don't have much of it. It doesn't take about 15 minutes to do it, but it's just one of them, I don't know, mental blocks. I just don't like mowing it. I'd rather let it grow. I'm a country girl and transplanted into the city. Now I got to keep the yard somewhat manicured. These people around here, it's funny how they deal with their yards. I'll have to do a story time or something about that one of these days. That'd be a good one. Or maybe a ginger snap. But, oh my goodness, one more thing that I have to contend with. We've got lots of news to deal with today, so we'll just go ahead and jump right on into it. There's a bunch of stuff on the plate. First one we got here at the Bundy trial, and this is off of The Guardian. It says, Bundy trial, Oregon sheriff says he was threatened with ultimatum by the militia. Oh, interesting how they spin this stuff. Oregon Sheriff David Ward said Ammon Bundy and his armed supporters repeatedly threatened to overthrow him and tore apart his small rural community in the first testimony in the high-profile militia standoff. Ward's town is still recovering from the impact of the Malheur refuge occupation, the sheriff told a packed federal courtroom in Portland on second day of the trial. We're still dealing with a lot of the fallout, he said. Ward, the local sheriff in rural Harney County, was thrust into national spotlight at the start of the armed occupation, which began on the 2nd of January when brothers Ammon and Ryan Bundy led a takeover of Malheur National Wildlife Refuge to protest against the federal government. And their followers have long argued that federal authorities have no right to own or regulate public lands, and the activists traveled to Burns, a small town in eastern Oregon, to support two ranchers facing prison time. Father and son, Dwight and Stephen Hammond, were convicted of federal arson charges in a case for some ranchers and rural communities in the west overreach. The Bundys had hoped that Ward, as the top county law enforcement leader, would take a stand against the federal government and defend the Hammonds from imprisonment. Well, that's interesting. I'm going to stop right there for a minute. That's interesting that they'd say that, since this was double jeopardy. They'd already served their time and was put back into prison for the same crime. They left that part out. It says, during the Bundys' infamous 2014 standoff with the U.S. officers at their ranch in Nevada, stemming from the patriarch Cliven's refusal to pay grazing taxes, the local Clark County Sheriff Doug Gillespie expressed sympathy for the family and was critical of the federal government. But Ward made clear from the start that he wanted the Bundys gone and the occupation over. The sheriff told reporters that the Bundys were leading dangerous militia groups overthrow the government Ward said he and his family were facing death threats. Met with Ammon on a remote road outside of the refuge during the first week of the standoff, offering to escort the protesters out of Oregon. The Bundys declined the offer. He became particularly emotional when he reflected on the occupation in the immediate aftermath of the standoff, which dragged on for 41 days. Ward testified that Ammon and another protester, Ryan Payne, met with him last November and threatened civil unrest if the sheriff didn't intervene in the Hammonds case. My responsibility was to prevent them from going to prison, Ward said. If I didn't do those things, they would bring thousands of people to town to do my job. The ultimatum was concerning, and that the men told him, "We can't control what they may or may not do." The sheriff further testified that he had read about the Bundys' 2014 fight with the government and was frightened. "Happening in my community scared the hell out of me," he says. Also presented 2015 emails from defendant Neil Wampler to Ward, including one that said if the sheriff did not support the Hammonds, the country would be invaded by some of the most determined and organized and armed citizens alive in this country today. Wampler wrote, "We ain't playing." Brian Needham, a lieutenant in the sheriff's office, also testified that one of the occupation leaders, Ryan Payne, told him in a meeting that he should consider Ward his boss and replacing him. He told him he should use any means necessary to remove Ward, including death. Judge Anna Brown said she wanted to make it clear to the jury that the sentencing of the Hammonds was final and that the sheriff had no legal mechanism to fight it. The Hammonds had their process. A sheriff does not have the authority to change that. During cross-examination, Marcus Mumford, Ammon's attorney, repeatedly asked Ward if he believed that the federal government had the authority to regulate public lands in Oregon. The exasperated sheriff responded, "I'm not understanding your question. Did I investigate the federal government? Years of case law that show that they can own land." Ward also clarified that he did not feel physically threatened by Ammon and never saw him carry a gun. The Bundys and 5 other defendants are accused of impeding federal officers, though the use of force, intimidation, or threats, and during opening arguments on Tuesday, prosecutors said the defendants had launched a coordinated conspiracy against the government. Defense lawyers argued that the protesters were peaceful activists who were engaged in civil disobedience and were making a statement about protecting a disappearing way of life in the rural West. The government has charged a total of 26 people, though 11 have negotiated plea deals. Continued to attract large crowds on Wednesday, including Bundy relatives, their supporters, and representatives of Burns Native American tribe, which had historically occupied the refuge land and opposed the militia protest. Outside the courtroom, Bundy supporters said Ward was to blame for the occupation, with one saying he will have to answer for it when he dies. Flag-waving activists supporting the defendants gathered across the street from the courthouse Wednesday afternoon, carrying signs that said "Ranchers' Lives Matter" and "Release the Malheur protesters." A lone protester opposing the Bundys held up a poster that read, "No guns or explosions in our wildlife refuge." Hearing, Lisa Bundy, Ammon's wife, told The Guardian that the family has been repeatedly disappointed by Ward's actions. He has more power than any federal official did, and he put all the power in their hands, which made me think he didn't want to deal with it, she said. So why is he in that office? She added, "I would love for him to speak the truth and not what he was told to say." Jeff Bonta, one of the defendants on trial, said in an interview that he felt it was clear that the occupation was never dangerous or violent. "I just wanted to help bring attention to the Hammonds," said Bonta, who was one of the final 4 holdouts at the refuge. "We did have arms, but we were not going to shoot, only in self-defense," he added. That story, while rather tilted. The next one that we have here is off of the express.co.uk. To come up. Little hamster's running in its wheel. There we go. And now if we can get it to scroll a little bit here so that I can read it. Poor little hamster. Run, baby, run. There we go. Prepare for a perfect storm that will obliterate stocks. Economist terrifying warning. Investors should prepare for world stock markets to sink by a massive 12% of the turmoil that tore through stock markets at the beginning of the year, according to David Rosenberg, economist and strategist at wealth management Liskin Shrieff. Going to try to play some kind of an ad. We'll try to get rid of that. Stop. Let's see. He believes markets are not ready for U.S. interest rate rise, and when the U.S. Federal Reserve does make changes to its policy, which could happen as early as next week, there's going to be a nasty shock. Mr. Rosenberg comments stocks suffered heavily on Monday, with Britain's top stock index, the FTSE 100, was down by 1.7%, while France's CAC and Germany's DAX plunged 2%. Economist told CNBC, you have a perfect storm here if you get something like Fed rate hike into several months. He said the problem is that the market is not priced for it. Surprised that we see some kind of repeat we had towards the end of last year into January, February, which was something close to 12% correction. Mr. Rosenberg added, we entered into the third quarter with momentum and with a lot of hope, and now we're exiting the third quarter. The problem now, looking at where the market is priced, you've got or cycle high multiples. You've got a lot of hedge funds in the futures options market that have been chasing performance here highs, and it doesn't take much in the way of any sort of near-term adverse news to cause the market to correct. The uncertainty around the U.S. elections is also weighing on the settlement. In a similar vein to the Brexit vote, said Mr. Rosenberg believes Donald Trump win could initially shock the market, would be pretty good for the U.S. economy. So there's news on the economic front with the market acting wacky. The next one we have here is off the dailycaller.com. And I'm waiting for it to come up. Waiting. There we go. Poor little hamster. Okay, this one starts out with the title. If we can get her to scroll, there we go. Obama making fun of working folks for supporting Trump. This one. All these URLs are in the description of the video if you want to take a look at them and play any of these videos that's on them. This one says, President Barack Obama criticized Donald Trump's working class supporters while speaking to a crowd in Philadelphia on Tuesday. I keep on reading this analysis that, well, you know, Trump's got like support from working folks, he told attendees at Hillary Clinton's campaign rally. Really? You want to be champion working people? This guy who spent 70 years on earth showing no concern for working people, Obama continued. This guy's suddenly going to be your champion? I mean, he spent most of his life trying to stay as far away from working people as he could, and now this guy's going to be the champion for working people, huh? Noted that Trump wasn't going to let you on his golf course, eliciting laughs from the crowd. In his condo, and now suddenly this guy's going to be your champion? I have to say to that. When was the last time that Obama did anything for the working class? Obamacare? What a joke. Are you kidding me? He ruined our healthcare system. Not that it was wonderful to begin with, but sure as hell was better than it is now. And gosh, maybe I've missed something. Has anybody been invited to play golf with him, or fly to these resorts and stuff that he spends all his vacation time at? Any of the working class folks that you know? Oh, I sure haven't been invited. How much time has he been spending with us? For what I see, he's been spending his time pushing a pencil, writing these executive orders to try to screw over the country. But hey, that's just my take on it. Maybe that could be the pot calling the kettle black, but I could be wrong. The next one we have here is off the dailystar.co.uk. Hamster run. Let's bring this one on up. Oh, gee whiz, come on. Sweet time. We're waiting, we're waiting, we're waiting. Bless its little heart. Revealed UK totally ill-equipped to deal with Russia nuke threat. Let's scroll up a little bit so we can read the story. Scroll up all at one time. For goodness sakes, come on. Okay, it says, well, what on God's green earth? All right. Relations with Russian President Vladimir Putin are on a knife edge as NATO forces prepare for a potentially catastrophic conflict in the Baltic. And Putin is preparing the motherland for nuclear devastation, building scores of new bunkers, bombs, and space weapons as we speak. Daily Star Online has already revealed nuclear targets Vlad could strike in World War III. The situation for Brits as far more bleak than first feared. Britain is not only the brink of try it again. Britain is not only on the brink of nuclear catastrophe. The country's defense system, military strategy, and training standards are nowhere near the required level to take on Putin's Russia. That's according to Dr. Andrew Foxall, director of Russian studies at a highly respected Henry Jackson Society. He told Daily Star Online, as things stand, the UK is ill-equipped to deal with Russia. There is an urgent need to strengthen not only UK's defenses, but NATO members as a whole. The alliance isn't doing enough to build up the range of capabilities necessary to defer an aggressive Russia. And I'll scroll up a little more and see. Dr. Foxall believes that one of the key reasons behind this inadequacy is the shift in military focus to deal with counterterrorism in countries like Iraq, Libya, and Afghanistan. He added, for almost 2 decades, the UK, with its NATO partners, on counterinsurgency warfare, has been up against lightly armed insurgent forces rather than counter or state-on-state warfare. Turn of war has introduced logistic systems, training, exercises, equipment, and priorities quite different from those required to respond to a Russian threat. It doesn't stop there. Daily Star Online revealed earlier this year that Putin's arsenal of nuclear weapons dwarfs NATO's 10 times over, and his warrant could hit Britain within minutes. Dr. Foxall points to Russia's activities over the past decade, claiming it would be foolhardy to rule out Russia as a threat to global peace and stability. Behavior over the past decade Its wars in Georgia and Ukraine and actions in Syria suggest that it would be foolhardy to rule out Russia as a threat to global peace and stability. Russia's Air Force bombers are frequently intercepted by RAF jets in UK airspace. Russia warships often sail near British waters. I have to keep scrolling through the ads they've got on this thing. It says, and Russia's submarines have attempted to an acoustic signature made by Vanguard submarines that carry Trident nuclear missiles. More alarming, in Russia, Tu-160 Jackpat bombers carried a dummy nuclear attack on northern England. Flying towards Hull, the bomber came within 20 miles of British airspace before turning away. Chances of war between Russia and the UK seem rather low. It remains, it remains a possibility that Russia will prepare for it, and Moscow has been doing so for some time. British Admiral Lord West has already predicted war on its way and warned that the world is at least stable in his 60-year military career. And Dr. Foxhall agrees with the military hero. He added, Lord West is quite right when he says that the world is more dangerous and chaotic than it was during the Cold War. And I think that's the end of it. Trying to scroll on down here. Yes, that's the end of that article. So there you have that information. The next one that we have here, excuse me, freebeacon.com. And this one says, America test launches ballistic missiles from submarine silo. U.S. forces recently completed 2 successful test launches of unarmed ballistic missiles. This is conducted to demonstrate the military nuclear deterrent force. The U.S. Strategic Command, known as STRATCOM, said Monday U.S. forces tested submarine-launched ballistic missiles, intercontinental ballistic missile, over the course of a week to verify the accuracy and readiness of the nation's nuclear deterrent capability. August 31st launched an unarmed Trident missile off the coast of Florida from USS Maryland, an Ohio-class ballistic missile submarine. The operation, called a demonstration and shakedown operation, tested readiness of the fleet ballistic missile submarine strategic weapons. Represented the 161st successful test flight of the Trident II D5 missile, which is the Navy's latest generation of submarine-launched ballistic missiles. By Senator Deb Fisher, Republican of Nebraska, a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, who watched the submarine missile launch aboard the USS Maryland. From below the surface, I observed the exceptional members of the Navy's Silent Service as they conducted their drills, Fisher wrote of the operation in a weekly column. It was a proud moment to see them carry out the mission of nuclear deterrence with precision. U.S. Air Force General John Shaw, STRATCOM Deputy Director of Global Operations, also observed the test launch and described it as terrific accomplishment. Showcased the ability of our fleet ballistic missile submarines to deliver our nation's most survivable and enduring nuclear strike capability, Shaw said. This launch was a terrific accomplishment for the USS Maryland, for Submarine Group 10, and for the entire team that provides the nation with safe, secure, effective, and ready deterrent. Less than a week later, a team of Air Force Global Strike Command airmen from the 341st Missile Maelstrom Air Force Base in Montana launched an unarmed Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile equipped with test re-entry vehicle, Blandenberg Air Force Base in California. The vehicle traveled roughly 4,200 miles before descending at Kijulan Atoll, part of the Marshall Islands in the Western Pacific, according to Stratcom. The Minuteman strategic weapon system is a key element of the U.S. Strategic Deterrent Forces. Intercontinental ballistic missile test launch provides provide the Defense Department with data on the reliability, accuracy, and performance of the ballistic missiles weapon system. Admiral Cecil of Stratcom said that the test launches of the missiles affirmed the readiness of the U.S. nuclear triad, but emphasized the importance of modernizing U.S. nuclear infrastructure in order to deter threats. To see that today's systems work well beyond their expected service life. These tests prove that our nation's strategic Marines, ICBMs, and bombers is safe, secure, effective, and ready, Haney said in a statement. But we cannot rely on that indefinitely. Sustaining and modernizing the nuclear enterprise infrastructure is crucial to maintaining a strong, credible, and flexible nuclear deterrent, which is essential to our national security and the security of the United States, allies, and partners. Haney has previously made a point need to maintain a strong nuclear deterrent and modernize nuclear triad, given military investments made by Russia and China, as well as the nuclear programs of North Korea and Iran. Just days after the intercontinental ballistic missile test launch from California, North Korea claimed to have successfully tested a nuclear warhead, its fifth and most powerful nuclear test. Stratcom released photos showing the USS Maryland diving before test fire the Trident II D5 missile and others capturing the Trident II D5 and Minuteman III missile launches. Stratcom is one of the Pentagon's 9 unified commands carrying our missions, focusing on strategic deterrence as well, space and cyberspace operations, electronic warfare, missile defense, intelligence, and surveillance, and so there you have information on the ballistics. The next one, americasfreedomfighters.com. And Little Hampshire's running. It says Iraq vet shot while saving woman and baby being attacked by BLM thugs. Media silent for this reason. On Sunday, two black males approached a woman and her baby in a Walmart parking lot in Shawnee, Kansas. Was placing her baby in the back seat of her car. The men approached. One of them struck the woman in the head. Two black male suspects had intended on kidnapping and robbing the female and infant. After they struck her in the head, they were going to throw her in the car and steal it. That is what they planned on. Was 33-year-old Air Force Iraq vet heard the screams from the female and ran to her aid. The Air Force vet was shot multiple times as he approached the men in an attempt to rescue the female and the infant. He would have helped anybody. It wouldn't have mattered if they were old, white, or black, or whatever. He would have done it for anybody, the vet's mother said. The Good Samaritan served 6 years in the Air Force and had deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. The first was that he was shot in the face and dying. She was later relieved to learn that he had survived despite wounds to his face and chest. We know parts of his left nostril was blown off and his face, left chest area are wounded, the man's father told Fox 4. His mother said even with his injuries, the man was still concerned for the woman and her child. He was more concerned about how the baby was and the woman, she explained. The second man saw what was happening and came to the aid of the downed vet and the female and the infant. That Good Samaritan shot and killed one of the suspects. Male fled from the scene. The second Good Samaritan, a 36-year-old DeSoto man, was interviewed by police and released. told police that she did not know either of the suspects, and there was no word yet why the suspects attacked her. The attacker who was killed was identified Monday as 28-year-old John W. Simmons III of Kansas City. Fred Wyatt III, 27, of Overland Park, Kansas, was arrested on Tuesday and charged with Johnson County District Court with attempted first-degree murder, attempted aggravated kidnapping, and attempted aggravated robbery. Wyatt was released from Kansas Corrections in July after serving a sentence for a 2009 involuntary manslaughter case in Wyandotte County and subsequent drug violations of probation. The two Good Samaritans asked for their names to be withheld and about the welfare of the woman and the infant. The identity of the woman and her baby are also being withheld. The media, the race, and the two Good Samaritans are also being withheld at this time. And Tennis of Shawnee Police Department said of the attack, "You know, our hearts and prayers go out to both of them for speedy recovery. I know we have many people out, many teams of officers and detectives. We had to make contact with the family of Good Samaritan number 1 to get them to the hospital to be with him, but apparently Good Samaritan number 1 is able to talk." So there you have that story. Wow. Got to be careful, I'll tell you. Head. The first one you have is, or the next one we have here is off the federalistpapers.org. Approved top 10 reasons to sit for the anthem. The list is despicable. This reads, as Black Lives Matters, that's what they call it when the group infests the Democratic Party and gets invited to the White House. They're aligning themselves with some pretty foul characters. Outside the home opener against Los Angeles Rams in Santa Clara, fans coming into the stadium to get a glimpse at another Colin Kaepernick's farcical demonstrations against the national anthem were handed a flyer telling them they too could sit out the Star-Spangled Banner in solidarity with Kaepernick. Sit down for the nastiful anthem is what they're calling it. And they got a hashtag, sit down for the rag. The title of the flyer. It says it's produced by the Revolutionary Communist Party, a group we've written about several times. They're a cult-like group that advocates massive conflict akin to violent overthrow of the U.S. government, led by an old white aging hippie who manages to get people to practically worship him. They have been desperately trying to align themselves with Black Lives Matter movement, attending and organizing rallies, demonstrations, and protests. They want to woo angry Black people to their cause, and they'll do anything to achieve it. The flyer's 10 reasons are so idiotic that they are offensive and shows the hostile view they have towards the country they live in. Sign reads, top 10 reasons to sit down for the nastiful anthem. For the rag. Number 1, because the United States was founded on slavery. Black people still have no rights. This white supremacist system is bound, and there is an epidemic of unpunished murder by police. Because the USA was built on and continues to carry out genocide of the native peoples. Because America was created by stealing half of Mexico's land, conquest, rape, and plunder in 1846 through 48. 4, because in America, a woman is raped every 2 minutes and a woman is battered every 9 seconds. Violence fueled by a culture of porn and patriarchy. Number 5, because the U.S. massacred over 200,000 innocent civilians at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan, with nuclear bombs and is the only country that ever used them. Number 6, because the U.S. murdered 3 million people during the Vietnam War and has killed over 1.3 million in the Middle East since 9/11. Because America imprisons 2 million people, mostly Black and Latino, more than any country on earth. Number 8, because U.S. terrorizes and demonizes immigrants, deporting 1.7 million in the last 5 years alone. Because America's wealth comes from exploiting and enslaving millions of people here and around the world, including children from Mexico to China to Congo and Bangladesh. Because America has done more to destroy the planet's environment than any other country on earth. The U.S. military is the single greatest institutional polluter in the world. I have at the bottom of it a website called revcom.us. And we've got an internet meme they're hoping catches on with the BLM community, and it's a poster, and it has a picture of Kaepernick, and it says, "Sit with Colin, no respect for that genocidal rag." Then the article says, Black Lives Matter and Revcom have worked together before. They took turns screaming at people during the Republican National Convention in Cleveland. They worked with BLM in Milwaukee to foment rage and hatred. This is a dangerous gamble for Black Lives Matter. Communists, especially this group of angry white Marxists or Maoists, have no use for concern for blacks. They're just pawns in the global plan for communist takeover. Holy moly. Hard to believe that people can be that brain damaged, isn't it? Next one we have here is off of freedomworks.org. It says EPA uses new math to justify costly global warming regulation. It says when calculating the future impacts of government action, the federal government has very specific rules about how the calculation should be done. The Office of Management and Budget, or the OMB, clearly states that when calculating the future impacts, standard discount rate of 7% should be used. A discount rate is used to take account of the fact that $10 today is worth more than $20 years from now. The global warming regulation, that 7% rate is a problem for bureaucrats. With a 7% discount rate, the present cost of future global warming is virtually zero, even using the federal government's excessively alarmist models. What's a radical federal bureaucrat to do when math says that global warming will have virtually no negative economic effect? Well, they take a page from the Common Core and they change how they do the math. In 2010, global warming alarmists in the Obama administration set out to find a way to justify the huge cost of global warming regulation they wanted to pursue on creating a social cost of carbon, which purports to put a dollar figure on the alleged future economic harms of global warming. The bureaucrats could then take this theoretical cost and use it to claim that their regulations were actually saving the economy from future damage. Cost, the government selected 3 integrated assessment models, which project the economic future. Not surprisingly, all 3 tend to estimate substantial harms from global warming, even though there is a great deal of debate over how much warming might happen in the future and whether any such warming will be harmful. But the purposes of this discussion can be left aside. When the federal government's standard 7% discount rate was applied to these theorized future harms, the present values of those costs dwindled. Indeed, applied to one of the models, the present cost is actually negative. Taking no action to reduce carbon dioxide could actually be environmentally beneficial. In other words, today will be more beneficial to the future Americans than restrictive regulations, even if we assume significant future harm from global warming. Could not be allowed to stand. The cost of carbon is to artificially inflate the benefits of global warming regulation. So the bureaucrats do what they do best, change the rules to get the outcome they wanted. The Obama administration used different, much smaller discount rates. The administration publicized a calculated social cost of carbon for discount rates of 5%, 3%, and 2.5%, completely disregarding the required 7%. The mid-range of the new 3 lower rates, and announced a social cost of carbon of $36 per ton of carbon dioxide, in contrast to close to $0 per ton at 7% rate. The upshot is that now every global warming regulation that claims to reduce carbon dioxide, a colorless, non-toxic, non-polluting gas that's necessary for planet life on Earth, providing a benefit of $36 for every ton of reduction. Given that virtually every human activity, including breathing dioxide, the federal government can now claim climate benefits for almost any regulatory action it undertakes. And just last month, federal court deferred to the federal government's decision to use this value for social cost of carbon. The dishonesty inside dealing here is obvious. Alarmist, using exaggerated models, disregarded federal guidelines, and cooked the books until they got an outcome they liked. And there are even some radical environmentalists that say that this inflated number they manufactured is still too low. System. Other manipulation of our alphabet soup government. Next one we have here is off of neonnettle.com. Why you're not being told about Russia's teardrop statue. I think most of us probably remember when the teardrop statue did. But do we remember that it came from Russia? That would be the question. Reads, it says the teardrop gift from Russia to remember the victims, including Russian victims of 9/11, has not had hardly any coverage from the mainstream Western media. Why? Could it be that the fact that the U.S. government wants its citizens to see Russia and Putin as the enemy? Exactly, that the coming world war that may involve Russia will soon be upon us. The last thing the U.S. media wants is for its citizens to view Russia as a friend. The New World Order problem for the elite. Anon News reports, I've got to admit I didn't even know this memorial existed. However, it took me 2 seconds to realize why. It received zero publicity. Now, why do you suppose that? Express their gratitude. Name me another country that's done more. This is stunning memorial which pales into significance whatever the real terrorist gangsters are trying to do at Ground Zero. The very thought of Larry Silverstein and Frank Lowy have anything to do with the memorial for 9/11 victims is positively gut-wrenching. About 50 million people visit New York every year. Million live there, but no one seems to have heard of the teardrop. Tall, 175-ton memorial to those who died on the city's blackest day. The Zionist control U.S. media gives the U.S. memorial dedicated by Putin a total silent treatment. The monument is barely known, even amongst local residents and there's pictures of this monument in this article, and there's some video if you want to take a look at that. Anything about that in years. But it was by Russia. One is express.co.uk. And trying to get it to scroll up a little bit here. There we go. Armed militias stormed council meeting after right-wing anger over Muslim plan for mosque. Armed militia in a small U.S. town forced council meeting to be canceled following a growing security concern over their presence. The violent group of right-wing protesters carried guns into local square to demonstrate against the presence. And the thing's jumping all around in the country. And There we go. The meeting, which was expected to lift a ban on new places of worship, was called off amid, well, now it's trying to play something, for goodness sakes. And we got to get that stopped. Stop. Now, there we go. There we go. The meeting, which was expected to lift a ban on new places of worship, was called off amid growing tensions in Newton County, Georgia. 5 weeks ago, a local Muslim group laid out construction plans for an Islamic cemetery, mosque, and school. I was trying to play another one, for goodness sakes. But it was met with anger from a loud minority of the town. Of the so-called right-wing Georgia Security Force, or the GSF, posted a video on the weekend showing them trespass onto the site cemetery and mosque school. One member of the militia climbed a tree to hang an American flag on the property where the mosque would be built. The group, led by, well, and now it's going to jump around. The group, led by local resident Chris Hill, is now under investigation from Homeland Security and local law enforcement. Newton County Manager Lloyd Kerr said the group harassment or violent behavior. She added, unfortunately, in today's society, uncivil threats or intentions must be taken seriously. Following this, nearly 30 members of the armed militia stormed the local town center armed with machine guns, forcing the mosque meeting to be canceled. Local man said Islamophobic public meetings had revealed a dark side of the small town. Edward Amid Mitchell from the local Georgia Council on American Islamic Relations said county leaders shouldn't allow themselves to be bullied into canceling public meeting on a controversial issue. That rumors about the mosque being used as a cover for an ISIS training ground have been used to attack the plans. He added a small group of anti-Muslim extremists were able to frighten a government canceling a public meeting. There's a message about the power of fringe extremists to affect elected officials. Muslims can stand up to these threats every day that we walk out of our houses, then a small group of elected officials can do the same thing. One protester, Jim Stashawak, told an audience of reporters, "It's a declaration of war against the United States of America. The ultimate goal is to impose Sharia law." Philip Morris added, "The Quran is nothing but hate speech." Leader, who calls himself a commanding officer of the militia, added, "We're not here to intimidate. You're just seeing two different rights being exercised at the same time." Among the peaceful counter-protesters at the town center hit back, said, "I am personally Christian, and we believe defending other people's right to worship will keep our right to worship safe as well." Another counter-protester, Linda Allen, added, there's nothing American about this. These people live in this country. They are U.S. citizens. U.S. They are granted the rights and privileges of any citizen who lives here, and there's nothing to keep them from wanting to live here and wanting to build their places of worship. It's just wrong. The town manager expects the next meeting on September the 20th to go ahead with moratorium on mosque to be lifted the following day. So there's that information. And the next one we have, if I can get the ads to, to stop on it. This is off the Hindu.com. Well, between me putting this up here to read it and me pulling it up now, or putting it up this morning to put it on the list, and now they've taken the article down. Interesting, because this one was off of the Hindu, and it was Hillary Clinton's history of ignoring her health issues, and it's been pulled. Well, isn't that fascinating? Cover up, ain't she? So I guess we won't read that one. The next one we have Bloomberg.com, and it says Monsanto seeds unleash unintended consequences across U.S. farms. Spray may boost seed sales for Monsanto. And it says it's good marketing strategy, I guess, and it sucks for us. Thing about the herbicide dicambia that's always made it hell on soybean and cotton crops. So for decades, the industry marketed it for use on grassy species, wheat and sod and the like. And others, farmers mostly had to steer clear. Then in 2005, Monsanto Company hatched a two-point plan. First, it would engineer soybeans and cotton to make them dicambia resistant. Next, it would create a special variant of the pesticide less likely to waft off to where it isn't welcome. Part one of the plan is done. The seeds are in the market. The second part is not. Some farmers growing the new seeds seem to be enjoying the sense of invincibility it's given them. Despite state and federal prohibitions, they've taken to spraying dicambia, and the stuff has been drifting all over the U.S. heartland. For folks like Landon Hayes, who grows earlier generation soybeans in Campbell, Missouri, the consequences have been costly. He says 500 acres of his crops were damaged this summer by stray wisps of dicambia, and now he feels compelled to buy the engineered Monsanto seeds to avoid injury next season. They knew that people would buy it just to protect themselves, Hayes said. You're pretty well going to have to. It's good marketing strategy, I guess. It kind of sucks for us. Dicambia misuse complaints. Christy Dixon, a Monsanto spokeswoman, calls suggestions it orchestrated the situation absolutely false. The company took extensive steps, she says, to remind growers that applying dicambia to new Extend brand plants lines would be illegal. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has approved the herbicide for more than 12 crops, but never during the summer growing season on cotton and soybeans. Monsanto is waiting for EPA approval of its enhanced dicambia and chemical it's never manufactured before. The EPA may issue its decision before the end of the year, and if it gives the okay, regulations for the product safe use on cotton and soybeans. In the meantime, Missouri has received 117 complaints alleging dicambia misuse, afflicting more than 42,000 acres. According to EPA compliance advisory, farmers can face fines of $1,000 a penalty. Some lawmakers hope to increase. 9 other states, from Illinois to Texas, are investigating claims too. Public outcry. In Arkansas, dicambia drifts have been such a pest that proposals in the works to boost maximum fines to $25,000 from $1,000 and bar nearly all dicambia product use near row crops. Public outcry, even though there's not a lot of formal complaints, says Susie Nichols, a manager in the pesticide division of the Arkansas State Plant Board. People don't want to turn on their neighbors, but still they want something done. The product may get worse as Monsanto aims to increase sales of Extend soybeans 50-fold in the next few years. If it doesn't do something, that means every farmer needs to buy Extend to protect themselves from their neighbor. Oxgard, an analyst at Sanford C. Bernstein and Company, Extend to prolong the usefulness of its Roundup Ready systems. For 2 decades, farmers have relied on Roundup herbicide, using it so widely for so long that some weeds evolved to survive it. So the company decided to tweak the system with enhanced seeds and dicambia. Extend cotton hit the market last year, and soybeans distributed this year. Formula. The company is counting on rapid adoption of Extend to boost earnings in its seed and pesticide units. It sold about 3 million acres of the cotton and 1 million acres of the soybeans this year, and expects the soybeans to rise to 15 million in 2017 and 55 million by 2019. As dicambio resistance is added to other crops, the technology may eventually be on 250 million acres, Monsanto told investors August the 17th. The recipe for new dicambio includes something called vapor grip, which is supposed to reduce volatility. The problem with existing formulations is that the chemical can vaporize off plants on warm days, making the herbicide vulnerable to drift. The chemical company BASF is working on something similar to vapor grip. Jason Birdsong says he noticed dicambio trauma last month at his farm in Giles County, Tennessee, in the form of twisted seedless soybean pods across 70 acres. Before he hadn't planned on paying a premium of $5 to $10 an acre for Extend. Any extra spending during a time of falling prices, which is putting pressure on farmers, has to be carefully weighed. But now Birdsong is reconsidering. It don't take but one goof like we had this year, and then I think it'll pay to have that protection, he says. If this dicambio thing catches on, I'm sure we're just going to ride that wagon. Soybean and cotton farmers can buy Extend to fend off dicambio, but fruit, vegetables, and other such crops don't have that option, says Steve Smith, an agricultural director at Red Gold, the world's largest closely held canned tomato processor and chairman of the Saved Out Crops Coalition. The group is petitioning the EPA to classify the coming products from Monsanto and BASF as restricted use status, which would require they be dispensed by certified pesticide applicators. Sprays may be less turbulent. Smith figures they'll probably still have some wafting issues, and even a little dicambio can go a long way. It's like getting run over by an SUV rather than an 18-wheeler, he says. It doesn't really matter if you're dead. Information. And I don't know, some people may hear me read that and say, well, what's that got to do with me? It's got everything to do with you. They're poisoning the food source. Even the people that's not using this Monsanto stuff are being affected by it because it's wafting onto their crops. So the next one we have here is off of Common Dreams. This is something that many of you may not have heard anything about. On for months. As rivers run black in Peru, indigenous tribes left cleaning big oil disaster. A disastrous spate of oil spills in the Peruvian Amazon have gone from bad to worse in recent days, leaving indigenous tribes frantically trying to clean up this mess by the nation's state-owned oil company. Catastrophic ruptures in Peru's northern Peruvian pipeline occurred on January the 25th and February 3rd and have threatened the water supply of nearly 10,000 indigenous people, says Amazon Watch. On Monday, Petroperu officials confirmed to Rutgers that the oil has poured into critical Amazon River tributaries that 8 Achuar tribes depend on for water. According to the news agency, these 2 tributaries of the Amazon River, the Chayarico and Morona rivers, are now filled with 3,000 barrels of oil. That the spills continue to spread and cause far worse damage after the responsible company, Petroperu, failed to act to contain the oil released by the pipeline breakages. A third pipeline rupture was rumored on February 19th, reports Amazon Watch, but the state-owned petroleum company took to Twitter to deny those reports. The devastating spills occurred mere months after indigenous activists staged massive protests against Peru's oil industry in September. Over the weekend, local activist Marco Arana Zigura posted horrific images of the oil spread in the Chiro tributary. Those responsible, where are they? Waterways flow with black sludge, and trees and flowers are rendered nearly unrecognizable by thick coating of oil in a video footage of the spills. At least this time, observes Zigra, Petroperu has given indigenous populations suits to wear for cleaning up the spills. Petroperu President German Velasquez denied reports the company paid children to clean up the oil, reports The Guardian. But then he went on, perhaps damningly, to say that he was evaluating firing 4 officials, including one who may have allowed children to collect the crude. It's important to note that the spills are not isolated cases. Similar to emergencies have emerged as a result of defects in pipeline, the National Environmental Regulator said, according to The Guardian. The regulator ordered Petroperu to replace parts of the pipeline and improve maintenance, states Reuters. Guardian reports that Petroperu will face fines up to $17 million if it's proven that the oil spills have affected the health of locals. This environmental disaster is just the latest in a long history of oil and gas leaks in the area, laments indigenous rights group Survival International, observing that more than 70% of the Peruvian Amazon has been by the government to oil companies. The group translates a call to action by AIDESEP, I guess that would be pronounced AIDSEP, an organization that fights for indigenous people in the Peruvian Amazon, in which it pleads for international public opinion, the media, NGOs, and civil society to pay attention to this serious event that puts in danger the lives of thousands of people living in the area who have tragically been neglected. Article. So if you're wondering about the protest that's going on in the Dakotas about that pipeline, this is why. The reason why these people protest, not only because it is going through the native sacred lands and disturbing all of that, but they are also protesting because of the disasters this stuff causes. So there's that article. And for your feel good today, some articles, and I thought this was a wonderful idea. It's called An Act of Kindness, and it says, grandfather or grandmother at a local nursing home. A lot of people in those nursing homes have no living family or family that visits them often. Make their lives happier and less lonely by building a connection with them, either by establishing a correspondence or visiting them from time to time. There's a lot of truth in that. There's a lot of older people that learn so much from them. We've talked about prepping on this show and on other shows, and on trying to learn old ways. I'll tell you, the best way to learn the old ways is to talk to some of the older people. Talk to them about prepping, and talk to them about the old way of doing things, and talk to them about, hey, what did you do before you had electricity, and how did you cure meat, and how was those things done? You can learn a lot from these people. To keep in mind, and it doesn't have to be at a nursing home. If you don't happen to live close to one, I'm sure you have older people. Just go and strike up a conversation with them, talk to them. A lot of these people are lonely and would love to have somebody to talk to. So you'll learn something and they'll get company. And another one I found that I thought was, it's called a positive affirmation. It says, I take advantage of the fact that I am alive. I try things I'm scared to do or too busy to do because I take advantage of the fact that I am here and that I can do these things. Overwhelmed a lot with the news and with the things that's going on and the negativity, and we forget that we're alive. And I was talking to somebody about this the other day, that we're all going to die, and we all know we're going to die, but do we spend every day crying and whining about it and, you know, worrying about, oh, I'm going to die someday, I'm going to die? No, we don't. We go on with life. We live our life, and it's the same way with the news. You can't get wrapped up in it to the point where you quit living. It's like, oh, well, people are just too busy watching TV shows. They got their mind on the Kardashians. They got their mind on this and on that, and they don't pay any attention to what's going on in the world. Well, you know, I think there's a happy medium there. You have to give up your television, and I don't think that you have to live in the news. If you've got a TV show that you like to watch, as long as you don't make an obsession out of it, that, you know, you're actually living the life of the characters on the TV, I think that it's okay to watch that kind of stuff. But I think you also have to pay attention to the news and things that's going on in your life. So I'm going to close down the show, and what I'd like for everybody to do is go outside. If it's decent where you're living right now, decent weather, go out, kick off your shoes, put your feet down in the grass, soak up some energy from the earth, balance yourself. Just take a deep breath of fresh air. Enjoy the weather. Enjoy your life. Maybe go out and talk to some old folks today and learn you a little something. Hope you enjoyed the show today. If you did, give it a thumbs up and share it. And with that, we'll close her down, and I'll see you back here tomorrow.